So when is Bitcoin going to hit $100,000? Here's the thing. At the time of this video, Bitcoin is sitting just below $99,000. It recently, earlier today, hit an all-time high of $99,244. So I think the 100K question is sort of irrelevant. Maybe by the time you're watching this video, we're above 100K, or at least we've touched it. So I want to extend the goalposts a little bit, get a little bit more ambitious, and ask the question, when are we going to see $150,000 Bitcoin? It could be later this week. It could be next month. It could take several months and happen only next year. But I want to realistically break down the likelihood and the timeline of that figure and present you with 4 scenarios as far as contingency plans as to when exactly BTC has a realistic chance to hit $150,000. Welcome to the channel. My name is Maddie and this is Altcoin Buzz. All the very best of luck if you choose to invest. I do wish you well. But I'm not a financial or investment advisor. Just remember that, as well as the fact that this video is not official financial or investment advice. Okay, so once again, as I record right here, Bitcoin is just a little bit above $99,000. I'm kind of assuming that by the time you've watched this video, perhaps, at least there's a good chance, perhaps BTC has already hit $100,000. So that's good, and that's worth celebrating. But we're asking the question, therefore, when's kind of that next milestone? When is Bitcoin going to be able to touch and surpass $150,000? Well, scenario 1 is on or before the 20th of January, 2025. That specifically is Inauguration Day for the United States. And President-elect, currently, Trump, is going to take over the White House at that time, as well as the agencies that oversee cryptocurrency in the United States. The latter part of that statement perhaps being more important as far as we're concerned. And as Trump and his transition team work on figuring out who to nominate to all the various positions out there in the new government and what priorities they're going to have, they can have a pretty massive influence on markets, crypto, and more broadly speaking, pretty much all the markets out there that exist. For example, Bitcoin bull here, Senator Bill Hagerty from Tennessee, is on the shortlist for Treasury Secretary. That is the department, of course, that oversees the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission. And as for the SEC itself, Gary Gensler is leaving. So that is addition by subtraction as far as we're concerned. There are a few names floating around out there as possible heads of the agency. These include SEC Commissioner Hester Pierce, who's actually pretty well liked and respected in the industry. Also, Brian Brooks of Hedera Hashgraph, and a few others who are, much friendlier overall and more balanced for the industry than we've previously seen. Pretty much all of the options out there are good, are positive right now. And so there's no question that quality names listed to lead these important positions could really translate into a significant pump in the market. And typically speaking, if we look at the historical patterns, this is also pretty much the best time of the year for the market. Q4 specifically is often very active because people are trading and making moves to set themselves up for the new year. So generally speaking, performance is above average. And if you take all of this and then add in the bull market variable and the fact that we're in the middle of a bull cycle, well, it's probably going to take something rather negative to pull the market back down because otherwise, again, $100,000 seems imminent, and that's the major point of resistance right now for BTC. Beyond that, 150K, as a lot of people are saying, is not going to be all that difficult to achieve. Not all that much resistance is going to exist once we kind of really hit that 6-figure mark. I think that's the main psychological barrier right now. In fact, a lot of people are speculating that at 100K, it would be relatively easy and frictionless for BTC to 2x or go to 200K. So by January 20th, 2025, we could see $150,000 Bitcoin. But we always have to keep contingencies in mind because there's always that very real possibility that unexpected news could present us with some other scenarios. Let's explore those now. In scenario 2, we're considering spring and summer 2025. And this scenario is a little bit more nuanced than our first scenario. Here, we have to wait until the spring or even early summer of 2025 to get beyond 150K. Why would this happen? Well, take some of the good that we talked about in scenario 1, but mix in a sprinkle of bad news as well. Like maybe, possibly, a less relatively pro-crypto Treasury Secretary nomination. That is possible. Take a look at this chart here of Bitcoin over the course of 6 months between March and September of this year. So March to September 2024. Even during a bull market and subsequent to April's BTC halving, we can see here a lot of sideways trading can and does happen, sometimes for many months at a time. It doesn't negate the larger bull trend, but certainly any asset can get stuck in these sort of sideways patterns. Now, my point of view is that this is less likely to happen than scenario 1. But again, we want to consider all contingencies and thus, objectively speaking, yeah, it is a realistic option. It is possible. Scenario 3 would be before October 2025. I'm saying that in a fuzzy way, sometime before October 2025. And the significance of this date is the current 4-year cycle theory of Bitcoin. This was popularized by Plan B. And basically, the theory urges you to buy Bitcoin 6 months before the halving and then hold it until 18 months after the halving. That's 2 years in total. That 2-year period is known as the bull cycle, according to this stock to flow model. Now, the remaining 2 years until 6 months before the next halving in 2028 is the bear cycle. Now, the halving was in April of 2024, and so that means that buying in October 2023 and holding until October 2025 represents the full range, the full timeline of the bull cycle. So that's where these numbers come from. ETF buyers, Michael Saylor of MicroStrategy, and possible Bitcoin reserve by the US or other countries could all invalidate this whole cycle theory by really having the bull cycle go into hyperdrive. That's an optimistic possibility, and that is a realistic one as well. It could happen. But to be fair, this stock-to-flow cycle theory has been pretty accurate for previous cycles, and without any additional information or variables to consider, it's likely that that will be the case again. So it's good to take note of this. It's good to pay attention to those time ranges. Again, 6 months before the halving and then 18 months subsequent to the halving. That represents the bull market. Now, our take here is that this is actually the least likely to happen of all the 3 scenarios presented so far. The idea of having to wait until next fall to get to $150,000 or so doesn't seem realistic, but there's always a narrow chance of stuff happening, right? So it is nonetheless a possibility. Now, scenario 4, admittedly here, does represent kind of the doom and gloom outlook. It's not to say I think it's going to happen this way or it's going to unfold in this manner, but we do have to at least plan for, at least consider a worst case scenario. And that's what I'm about to describe here. Not to inject FUD needlessly into the conversation, but we have to consider all angles, all circumstances, all possibilities, right? This is the least likely of the scenarios that we've discussed so far. But in this one, Bitcoin does not hit that $150,000 at all in this cycle. So that is to say, BTC does not hit 150K until the next bull market. In my humble opinion, it really would take a lot to keep Bitcoin from hitting 150K and beyond. And what we have to consider here are the geopolitical events that are starting to unfold here. So for example, if either the Israel-Iran conflict or perhaps more likely the Ukraine-Russia conflict, if either one of those escalate when Trump takes office in January, then that could lead to a lot of unrest and uncertainty in markets really all around the world, not just crypto, but all markets. And of course, that would include Bitcoin, which traditionally has always fought off geopolitical events to go higher. But there could always be, the first time, for example, that one is just too insurmountable for the BTC enthusiasm to conquer. That could be the case here. Another possibility is a deep US recession. Not likely, in my opinion, but again, we're considering all the contingencies here because let's play off the geopolitical events that I mentioned a moment ago. Well, another area which of course is related and which could also hurt Bitcoin's price would be a long and deep and protracted recession in the United States. For reasons that are kind of difficult to explain, and honestly, beyond the scope of this video, somehow the U.S. has stayed out of a recession in the last 2 years. And some people would say that's because The definition of recession has been changed just semantically to support the outgoing administration. Whatever, not to get into that. But officially, there hasn't been a recession. Many have been surprised by that. But nearly all of the rest of the world has had one or is still in one, really just aside from very insulated markets, maybe like the UAE or Singapore. But the US has avoided it. And many believe that Trump's declaration of import tariffs could take the United States into a recession faster than leaving the economy alone. Even these potential outcomes are things that Bitcoin, if you look at its track record, has shrugged off before, or at least when Bitcoin has taken a hit, it's always bounced back. But I would argue, especially in the case of a rapidly escalating global conflict, that's the kind of thing that could really shake the confidence of BTC and crypto investors. But that's my point of view. I think I presented these 4 scenarios in terms of most likely to least likely as we ran down the list. I think we're going to get to 150K probably in scenario 1 by or around January 20th, 2025. What do you think about this? When is Bitcoin going to hit $150,000? Do you think it's even going to get there at all in this cycle? Give me your thoughts and your predictions, including specific dates. I want to hear them in the comments below.